Good morning, Syd.
Good morning. Morning. Afternoon, but still, I just
But
woke up
it's
tomorrow.
my morning, Syd.
Yeah.
So today, Syd, we have Irish illustrator and NFT artist on the show. Her name is Aoife, and she creates these like feminine, whimsical creatures.
Nice. Looking forward to talk to her.
She also was the creator of Foofies, which is 111 mysterious beings that live in the gaps of perception.
The art looks cool. The foobies?
Yeah, I
Foofies?
thought you would like it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really cool.
it's
Yeah.
really like trippy. It's lovely to see you.
Oh, likewise.
Aoife and I have actually we've been on a panel for someone else's interview quite a while ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
I
that's
have
when we
no
first met.
idea.
Yes, that was a long time ago, Syd. I had probably only just met you then as well.
Oh, nice.
How are you today? Thank you for joining us.
I'm really good.
Tell us a little bit about how the mycelium network and mushrooms inspire your art.
Oh, okay. Where do I start with this? Okay. So how I found my way to the mycelium network. Initially it was through I read this many moons ago. So I had this like on and off again relationship in art college. And in one of my like on sessions, I was like doing this research around perception and like sensory perception, but also this idea of like personal space was a big thing I was looking at. And I read this phrase, and I can't find the origins of it, but the idea was, which I think in the meantime has been really substantiated by like neuroscience, but it's that our brains and our sensory systems, like our nervous systems, can't actually like take in all the information or the data from the world around us. So what it does is it just takes in what it can, and then it like presents us this like approximation of reality. So it was this idea of like that there's gaps and our brain fills in the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
So I became obsessed with the gaps and what could be in the gaps. And as part of that, I very quickly found myself looking at like microscopic worlds or like things that couldn't be seen with the naked eye, which led me to slime molds first, which immediately brought me to mycelium and then networks and mushrooms more widely. And that's how I started. So it's all about, or I was driven to it, or the topic, by this idea of perception and trying to figure out what lives in the gaps of what we can and can't perceive, and what could be real or not real. And yeah, I'll leave it there for now. There's so many different directions I could go.
No, that's
Let's start
actually
it.
a very good. That's a very good start to actually identifying that our brain is only perceiving what we see, and that's not just a theory; it's like a proven fact. And just to give a simple example, is the light we see. We don't see the whole light. The way we see the universe, that's not how it looks. We only see the band of the rainbow, right? From red to violet. No, what's the anyway, we see the seven colors of the rainbow, and then we don't see ultraviolet or we don't see infrared. So that the whole thing only perceive that this is not how universe look. It's just we are evolved to see it like that. The reality is far more different, and I appreciate the idea that you are incorporating this reality to your art.
Big time. I'm obsessed.
I love it. Because the creatures you create do sort of look like something under a microscope.
Yeah, that's it. I think bugs are, this idea of, and they're kind of alien bugs, so that was a big part of it, as well as like this notion of something that we can't perceive. So maybe it looks totally foreign to us. But that gets into a conundrum really fast, because my point of reference and my experience, my reality, is built from this world around me that I can perceive through my senses. So they're still going to be bound by the rules of, this world, or what we've figured out of it. So yeah, a lot of times it is just me trying to mush together things that are familiar, just in kind of new ways. And so yeah, that's definitely influenced by that idea of, what can't we see, or maybe there's stuff that we can see, but we can't see all of it. So like the light spectrum is a perfect example of that. Or maybe you can see a mushroom on the surface, but you can't see the spores that spread out from it. There's all these different dynamics in terms of vision as one sense, but there's all sorts of other senses that can play into that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you, when you are like creating your creatures, do you reference real life animals? Like, do you pull up images of like amoeba or sea creatures and use references like that?
Yeah, sometimes. A lot of the time I just pull it out of my brain, which is referencing stuff I've seen. I think what actually happens to me more often than not is that I will, like, I have like saved collections on all the different, like on TikTok and on Instagram or wherever, where if I see content, and I do get served a lot of content, which is often it's like sea creatures, like the deep sea creatures, which are they are aliens as far as I'm concerned. So like that kind of stuff, or like unusual creatures or unusual fungus kind of things, and I will save them. Now, I don't tend to go back to them or pull them up, but they're in there, so you know, they'll come through. Or sometimes I will directly just look at a reference, but I'll always add something. So yeah, it is that kind of idea of like, you know, I love those ones where, you know, they're like the juicy shrooms, or they have like the little, they like look like they're bleeding, or they've got little bubbles. So I remember pulling up a picture recently of like a specific one of those like bleeding bubble mushrooms, and then I was like, okay, that's fine, but what can't we see in this picture? So there'll always be that step where I'm like, yeah, this is obviously within our realm of reality, but more.
One question. So, speaking of mushrooms, have you tried mushrooms, and have you seen any things like that on your trips, or it's just like no? Okay.
Yes,
we had this conversation the other day. Because when I saw one of your pieces come up, I was like, oh, you're a psychedelic artist, we must have you on the show. And you were saying, no, you just love the deep dive information on mycelium and like the mycelium network and mushrooms, and like that communication and the things we can't see.
Yeah, like it's very hard for people to reconcile that I'm not experienced with psychedelics or shrooms. I'm like, I get why people assume that. But yeah, it's the origins of that like influence are like more on this interest in perception and neurology. And I mean, it veers into more metaphysics sometimes too, the idea of consciousness and dimensions, and how we experience this world, or the idea of self. It does veer into that kind of stuff too. But yeah, it's like I've wondered about it. I'm like, maybe the version of me that's living like in the 2D dimension, you know, has experienced psychedelics, and it's coming through in this. Like, maybe they're high right now and they're freaking out because you know, or it's like me in another dimension higher up is always, you know, playing with psychedelics and whatever that looks like in their dimension. It's filtering down. I don't know how it works exactly, but yeah, I have pondered that. I was like, because there's definitely a clear, like, I'm drawn to it. It is that concept of interconnectedness, and this idea of, and maybe it is tied into this idea of like a collective consciousness. What would that look like? How would it be connected? I like as well like this concept of or I was intrigued when I initially learned, you know, about like the fungi kingdom, and this like quite a distinct, like it's like a separate, they were like, no, we're gonna do our thing over here, you guys go off and evolve that way. Here we still help you out, we still interact, but we're gonna do our own thing. And it's like such a separate way of evolution. So like I found that really interesting too. So again, there's this like, why? What are they connected to? You know, it's a big universe. And this idea of, I remember like reading or seeing, when I say reading, I probably mean saw on TikTok for the most part, but I've learned somewhere on the internet about this, like how like mycelium networks, you know, mirror what like a brain neural pathway network would look like, and then zoomed out further, that can mirror like energy networks of like the universe or the stars in some visualizations. I know it's not like an exact, you know, proven thing, but I was like, ooh, okay, so we just keep zooming out. Like all the networks or all the systems are, you know, built on the same stuff. We're all living by the same rules, and obviously we don't know all the rules. I feel like we know very little, very few of the rules. But yeah, all that I'm fascinated by.
I heard something really interesting about how before evolution that plants were aquatic, and that is, it's actually because of the mycelium network that plants ended up becoming land plants. The studies that they're doing now, there's a group that's actually trying to map mycelium over the planet, and they're going to try and protect it and make it an endangered species, I guess. So they've acknowledged that it creates so much in our ecosystem, and it's so integral to our survival and the planet, and it can filter water and do all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, that was one of the first things I remember learning as well, was that, like, I mean, I guess where I imagine when I think of mycelium networks, I think of forest networks, and it's like in the roots, and it's like, oh, well, the conversation was around trees being able to like sense other trees and like send nutrients or send water. But they're like, but how it does that is through the mycelium network. And I'm like, okay. So there are these two distinct entities or like ecosystems that are connected. So I think for me as well, I connected that really quickly to the concept, like a social concept of this, like reciprocal, like community-based resource sharing. It's like, for me as well, it maps really neatly to, systems on a more conceptual level as well, not just physical or biological level.
So there's like back in 2010, Japanese based their Tokyo subway system based on the mycelium network. So
Really?
so they designed it because the mycelium network draws perfect patterns. It's the best route you can get. So they copied the system in the Tokyo subway
Oh,
system. Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
because it was, I
Yeah.
think I remember seeing that too. It was like slime molds. It's like they'll find the
Yeah.
most
Slime modes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So they put like little food, a little bit of food here, a little bit of food. It's like, so what's the fastest connection to this station, and the like slime molds figured out the best
Yeah.
route. It's genius.
Yeah. Look at the application of automation. Like you don't have to use your head. They will do the thing and just copy it. And it works perfectly.
They say that, like on the topic of mushrooms, like a mushroom, they say, is not a plant or an animal. It's something in between, they believe. So like it should have its own category of creature, which is kind of what you draw. It's its own category, right? It's a organic thing.
Yeah.
You hand drew 111.
Almost.
That's
Yeah.
a lot.
So that's those are my foofies. Yeah.
Yes.
So they're very connected to all these concepts actually.
Yeah.
So I'm currently drawing number 104. So I haven't finished that like
Wow.
initial series yet. It's been going on since like the end of 2021. So it's slow.
Yes. Yeah, I bet.
When I'm like, okay, that's kind of about as fast as like some electrical impulses would move through the mycelium network. It tracks. So I'm like, okay. But yeah, they're coming along. We're coming towards the end of the first generation of them, but they are literally the manifestation of this high level concept that I have in my work of, like they live in the gaps of our perception. So for me right now, it's like there could be foofy here beside me. There could be one in the room with you. You would have no idea because they exist outside those like visible light spectrums or sound waves. We can't, with our senses, perceive them, but they are on like the same. Because initially I was like, are they in another dimension? I was like, no, I think they're in this dimension with us. We just can't perceive them. So that's the kind of high level concept of like their origin and where they are and what they're doing. But yeah, they're deeply connected to the mycelium network. I see the mycelium network as maybe the interface between like us and them. So like if we communicate with them, that would be how we would. So similar, like the way trees would use the mycelium network. It's like, yeah, maybe that's our connection to the foofies, even though we can't technically see them.
Same thing goes with the dimensions. Those dimension doesn't have to exist somewhere else. They also exist with us in the same universe. We just cannot see them.
Yeah.
Even the string theorists, they say there are 11 dimensions in our universe. We just can't see them. Some say they're really small, or they could be enormously big, but we cannot access them. But those dimensions exist with us. So if a being like Fifi's exist, maybe access those dimensions, we cannot see them, but they're there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I see them when I was thinking about them. I was like, I think they're like, I guess there's this talk of like multiple dimensions, but I was like, they're omnidimensional. I feel like they can experience all the dimensions at the same time if they wanted to. Now, for the sake of obviously perceiving them as for the sake of like an art project or whatever, I'm like, okay, well, I've attached them to, they're in this universe, with humans. But like I see there being like a foofy, and I guess it ties into this idea of maybe quantum entanglement a bit, where it's like there's a foofy equivalent for each sentient mind or being in each of the universes. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, but that could be like, there could be a foofy version of your favorite cartoon character, you know, that could be a reality in some other dimension, and there's a fufu that can tap into that consciousness, or like any of the other dimensions you could possibly ever imagine, they can also interface with all of them. Yeah,
sort of mind expanding stuff.
It's complicated because when you look at them, you're like, oh, they're these fun characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, they're a bit weird, but like that's kind of a big part of what I actually love doing with my work as well, is it's like subverting expectations. So you see them, you're scrolling, oh, that's fun, it's quite graphic. Like I have this really like strict color palette, so they're almost branded. But then like you don't necessarily see on the surface like all of those things that in my head, like these are part of like, this is what they are and this is who they are and this is their world that they live in, the worlds that they live in. But yeah, that might just pass you by, which is kind of perfect in my mind, because it's like that's the whole idea, is like that information or that backstory or that reality or that story is in the gaps of what you will perceive if you just come across them on your timeline. So it's like, okay, so I guess that's just gonna be, that's how it's gonna be. But then if you do look, yeah, it's there.
What will you do after you draw 111? What will be next?
I'm gonna draw more. Well, okay, not exactly the same. So my plan from the beginning was always to do like a second generation, but they will be they'll be holder rewards. So to collect the second generation, you have to have like certain combinations from Gen 1, and then I will be like, you know, airdropping them depending on what combinations you have. So there's like another 8 or 9 like character types or like power levels. They're kind of attached to like elements and power levels and stuff. The first thing will be a collection of familiars. So that's going to be quite different because they're going to be kind of creature based. So each fufu will have like a familiar. And then beyond that, it's like varying levels of other characters that are more attached to like the power levels, which I guess is kind of like, it's kind of like magic, but it's also really rooted in science and sci-fi, obviously. So there's this real kind of mix of mythology and folklore and fantasy, but also like sci-fi and like fringe sciences or like metaphysics, all that kind of stuff comes into it too. But yeah, so the next kind of step for them is Gen 2. There's a bunch of other stuff too, but it's all very kind of behind the scenes or like slow moving. But what I know for sure is like this Gen 2 expansion, which is, it's going to be all holder rewards for the most part. Yeah.
You've recently started experimenting with AI too, haven't you? I've seen some of your beautiful work. How's that kind of influence like your craft? Because I know you're more of a traditional illustrator.
Yeah, it's quite fun. Well, I mean, it's a bit strange for me because actually, like, I guess I've been making art for like over 18 years in kind of a part-time context. It's only really in the last year and a half or so that I've been really full-time. But that's been primarily like with these illustrations, so like hand-drawn digital illustrations in a very specific style. But like in that previous 18 years, it's still trying to answer the same question the whole time. Like I've tried all sorts of different mediums, and like one of the very first things I worked with was photography. And that kind of started when I was in art college and had access to all this great like film photography equipment in a dark room and like, you know, lighting rigs, all sorts of stuff. So that's where it like originated. So like this recent foray into AI photography specifically, I've kind of, it feels like coming back to something, but like, I guess folks in this space don't really know that about me, about my work. That's not really what they've seen. Again, there's still lots of similar elements or like ideas, or like some of the visuals are still there, or the color, like there's still something there that feels familiar as far as I can, you know, I'm like, okay, this still feels like me. But it's also, it's meant that I've been able to experiment, I think, with, I think richer like environments. So like for me, like drawing backgrounds and like environments and worlds is always a bit slower. Like I'm definitely more comfortable in the character space. So like definitely this kind of AI experimentation, and it actually happened further, like earlier in the year, where I was kind of playing with Midjourney first, and I was trying to find like an illustration style that felt like me, and that took so much because like it was like through multiple steps of like mushing in my own artwork and then trying to mix those outputs with new artwork, and it was like really layered, but would start with like me just feeding it like my own drawings. So there was like that early experimentation which started me kind of being like, oh, I can expand out the worlds much more quickly. And then now with the photography stuff, it's a similar thing where it's like trying to still find my voice in the outputs, even though it looks totally different in terms of like a medium. But yeah, it's really fun. It's like some of the times like I put in, and my prompts are they're long. They're very long. And
Yeah.
sometimes I just throw stuff in there and I'm like, I don't know what that's gonna do, but I'm gonna put it in there. And like sometimes it's like really close to what I initially had in mind. Or like the main elements were there and then there's something totally out of the blue and I'm like, okay, never would have come to that. So then it feels like a real collaboration. And there's so many times as well where I've had outputs where I was like, okay, like I have an urge, I haven't done it yet, where I like want to redraw. So I still have that like urge to do it by hand, but like maybe mix in different things or like use it as like reference. Yeah, but yeah, the AI photography stuff has been really fun, and it's kind of fed into like another project that's going to be dropping soon, which is around like film stills, which is really enjoyable for me too, actually, because it was like again with my earlier work, a lot of the like feedback I used to get, like even just like in a college or like in an academic sense, was like, gosh, these look like film stills. And I remember not like expecting that when I first got that piece of feedback. And I was like, oh, I guess so, because it's like I was telling a story, but like with the photography stills. So the fact that I've kind of come full circle in a way to like be creating these AI photography pieces, which are deliberately trying to tell a story through like what looks like imaginary film stills. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Yeah.
You're using Midjourney for AI photography as well, or some other tool?
No, that's Stable Diffusion. So like it started, so there was this app called Revel, which I started using, which is kind of like a SocialFi trading cards app. And it built into it, they've partnered with Stability AI. So there's like these just in the app, just really accessible, just like, you know, a text to image prompt UI. And I started using that. That's actually where I initially started, because I was like, okay, I'm going to experiment with this because I don't want to like duplicate, because the cards that you make there can be minted onto Polygon. I was like, I don't want to like double up. I don't want to use work that I've already minted elsewhere. So I was like, I need to create something new. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll try out the tools that are in here and see what I can make and see if I can still make it feel like it's from me. So that's where I started originally. And I knew that was using Stable Diffusion, and they've kind of done this collaboration with Stability AI. And then in the meantime, since I started working with this other project, which is Electric Film, they set me up with like an automatic 1111. I'm not sure even how people say that out loud, because I'm like, I've seen that written down, but yeah, the auto 1111. So they set me up with this whole system, and so it's a bit more detailed. It's a lot more controls. I was like, ooh, there's so many levers I can pull in here. So yeah, I've been experimenting with that more recently, which has been very satisfying. So yeah, I guess those are the main tools I've used, is like the Stable Diffusion stuff for the photography, and then for the illustration stuff, I'm using Midjourney for that. Yeah, and I recently got an invite to Korea from Claire Silvers. Thank you to Claire. So I'm going to try. That's the next thing I'm going to try, which feels like a really exciting combo, because like, you know, you can draw and it'll like and mix it with your prompt. Ooh, I was like, drawing as well, all in one tool. So that's the next thing I'm very excited to try out in terms of AI tools. Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to see.
Yeah.
So how does it work? Do you draw in the program?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't dug into it yet, but like from what I know, it's kind of like you can put in your text prompt, but then you can like draw, like roughly draw. You can do like some like blobs about where you want certain things to happen. So like if you were talking about like, you know, a pink mushroom, you could like draw a little pink blob or like the rough shape of a mushroom where you want to position. So it'll like start pulling the composition from like your drawing, your digital drawing. And like the examples I've seen, like the drawing has been like just really rough, just kind of even just like blob out. So I don't know what it does if you even get more detailed with the drawing, like and how that would influence it. So I'm definitely going to play around with it. But yeah, like the idea of having that kind of control where, yeah, you can be a bit more directive in terms of composition or even color influence. Like you can kind of, you know, the way you might try and like dial up certain colors. I feel like you can do that as well. Don't quote me on any of this because I haven't actually tried it out, but that's my high level understanding.
That's great.
Oh, actually, this tool sounds very interesting, and that can help a lot of Illustrator. I hope Procreate include that in their app. That'll be much easier, right? Because like in Procreate, you have to draw everything from the scratch, and then you have to keep going. But if I can just draw a blob of a mushroom and it turns into a mushroom, that will be really helpful.
Very good. I mean, I'm sure you could do that and import it. I feel like Procreate feels like a real, like, they're really committed to, like, hand drawing and like that kind of process. I feel like, I'm not sure if I could see that happening, but like I definitely see people, or even like me, now that you've said it, I'm like, oh, maybe I could start in Korea and like bring stuff in and then, add to draw on top of it. I'm sure there's like limitless ways that you could combine tools, both traditional, digital, and AI. Yeah, it's very exciting.